Hello everyone and welcome to a new video of Mr. Mark Explains History. Today we will continue with the Cold War. In the last video I talked about the basics, what was the Cold War, and today I want to talk about two main differences between, one big difference between the US and the USSR, namely the economic system. So capitalism versus communism, what are the differences? So the Cold War is a conflict between the United States and the USSR. You could say it's about who has the biggest military, the most nukes, the biggest amount of power. But also they had two different economic systems, communism on the one hand and capitalism on the other side. In the last video I finished with those two AI generated images. So capitalism, AI thought it's like one rich guy surrounded by a lot of money, while communism is more about a group of people with some money on the floor. Whether or not this is a good representation, let's see, listen to my explanation, and then you can judge that for yourself. So let's start with capitalism. What is that all about? First of all, what does the name mean? So capital refers in economic theory to the machines, the factories that are used to make products. And in capitalism, that the means of production, the capital, the machines, the factories, they're owned by individuals, by private businesses, and the factory owners can decide to set their own prices. They make profit from the products they sell, and they compete with other businesses, with other factory owners in the free market. So anyone can own the machines, the factories, and they compete with each other. So if they make a great product, they have a good price, they can sell it on the market, they make a profit. If you have a bad product or way too expensive, you're outcompeted and your company goes bankrupt. So you have a lot of freedom. There's also a lot of risk involved. It can fail your business. But everyone has the freedom to start a business, make a profit, etc. And the government lets the market, lets the economy do what it wants. In French we call that laissez-faire, so businesses can do whatever they want. It means like let's do, you just let things happen in the economy without interfering in that. Later we'll see that in communism it's totally the opposite. So first let's talk about the 19th century before we dive into communism, because one man, Karl Marx, saw the industrialization happening, the Industrial Revolution, factories coming up, people working in there, and he thought this system is totally unfair. So in the 19th century, capitalism developed because of the Industrial Revolution, and you had a class of factory owners, the bourgeoisie, Marx called this, and the proletariat, the workers. You had two economic classes which were involved in some struggle, Marx said. So what was the struggle about? Well, the bourgeoisie, they owned the capital, they owned the factories, they kept all the profit from those factories. They had a very good life because they made a lot of money with their factories, and they kept on getting richer because they made the profit, while the workers owe nothing. They just work in the factories. They do not share in this profit at all. They just earn a very low salary. They have a bad life because they have low wages and they have very bad housing and almost no healthcare, and they have no rights in the 19th century, and they just stayed poor. So Marx observed this, the big differences between the people who have stuff, the haves, and the have-nots, the proletariat, the people who own all the capital, who own the factories, who make the profit, and the workers who just worked for them for a very low salary and they didn't share at all in this profit. So Marx said this system is very unfair. So the proletariat, they must overthrow the bourgeoisie and start in revolution, and they should also own these means of production, the capital, and share the profit with everyone in a perfect society. So based on that theory of Marx, communism was born. So what is communism about then? So the capital, the machines, the factories, they are still there. Of course, they also have that, but it's owned by the government, by the Communist Party, and the Communist Party say they are representing all the people in the country. So they are the people. So the government owns all the means of production. The Communist Party, the people own all the means of production. So, and they are the only ones who set the prices, so they control all the prices. They should share the profits with everyone, whether that's with direct money or taking care of them or making sure everyone has a good life. There's no competition because everyone is, all means of production are owned by the government, by the Communist Party, so there's only one state company. And there is no free market because the government controls everything. So you can already see this is totally the opposite than capitalism. So the government, Communist Party, has a huge control over the economy. What they say should happen, happens, so we call that a command economy. So the government controls everything. In reality, between communism and capitalism, there are like many different forms of economic realities. So in theory, capitalism is totally a free market. Business can do whatever they want and the government doesn't interfere. And in communism, the government controls everything. But in reality, there's a lot of different forms. So maybe you could say, well, North Korea is like totally communistic. The government there, the Communist Party or Kim Jong-un, like what he wants happens, so he controls everything. While you could say maybe in the US, it's a fairly capitalistic system. People have a lot of freedom to get rich, let's say the American dream. But on the other hand, the government doesn't really help people. Well, to a certain degree, they do help people, but not that much. So throughout the 20th century, in many countries, they saw that this maybe doesn't really work, pure capitalism, because some people just stayed poor, like as Marx said, and they thought we should help them. So they built up systems called welfare states with social democracy, where the government was putting some controls on the economy. So maybe healthcare should be free, people shouldn't make profit in healthcare. In education should also be free and for everyone. If you're old, you should get money from the government, etc. So they started interfering with the economy, and for example, in Sweden this happened. The Netherlands also to a bit of a less degree. So they do control in the Netherlands and in Sweden, also the US a little bit. There are some controls by the government on the economy. So it's not pure capitalism, it's more a little bit in between. China, you could say, well, the Communist Party is the boss, but and they control some companies, but you can also start your own businesses, make profit, be very rich. There's a lot of differences between rich and poor people in China too. So it's like pretty capitalistic, although they say, yeah, then with like the Chinese style communism, which is pretty capitalistic. So in reality, this pure communism and capitalism, that doesn't really exist. And we're also going to see that in theory, communism sounds great, but in practice, in the Soviet Union, it turned out fairly different. Hopefully, this was a bit clear. It's pretty complicated, capitalism and communism. So just remember, capitalism is a very free economy, free market, while in communism, the Communist Party controls everything. In the next video, we are going to talk about the Russian Revolution, when Russia became communist. So for the first time ever, there was a communist state. One country was communist. Thank you for watching. Let me know if you have questions, feedback, always welcome. Leave them in the comments, like, subscribe, all of that stuff. And see you next time. Thank you.